Be here now.
It's interesting to reflect on who's gathered here. See, as I sit here looking at you, what I see depends on what I'm busy being. If I'm Richard Alpert, you're an audience that has come to listen to me speak. If I am Ram Dass, you and I are seekers here to share the journey. If I am a soul in an incarnation, you are fellow souls in incarnations. And this is a soul fest, which we're hanging out to take stock of what's happening in our incarnations. It's pretty interesting. The Chinese proverb, it is a curse to be born in an interesting time. And here we are. Unless you don't find it interesting. Your work is always very clear. Sin Sin Ming, the great way is not difficult for those who have no preferences. I should forewarn some of you that I don't give linear presentations anymore at this moment. I also don't have any rules. And if I acknowledge my own role as creator, then when I look out, I see that you are equally the creator. And there is only one of us here, in drag, so to speak. We're making believe we're separate. Scary, isn't it? It's like you play hide and seek with yourself. And if I see even that as just another thought that arises, exists, and passes away, and just keep seeing the thoughts arise, exist, and pass away, each a total universe, each a birth, a life, and a death. I start to tune, at what level I don't know, to the space that exists between the thoughts. It's like the sky that exists behind the stars, or within the stars. And then all forms are like waves on the ocean. And everything becomes its natural, primordial, unmanifest self. From that level, there is nobody looking, there is nobody to look at, there is nothing to say. That level is as true as any of the other levels. Some of you think we have serious business here tonight. That's a level. Some would just have a cosmic giggle in their hearts. That's a level. Okay. Some are busy with the judging mind. Well, he's getting old. He's just like he used to be. Nothing's happened. It's all bullshit. I was 50 2 weeks ago. Isn't that far out? It was actually 4 weeks ago. I just lose it. I keep losing time. That's why being 50 is kind of far out. It's like my MG is a 74. It's the same level. Congratulations, you're 50. Well, I'll certainly try. I will try to be 50 all year long. I just got to figure out what 50-year-olds do. You should look wise but not arrogant. You should slow down a bit and get more introspective. It's great. It's fun when you stop identifying with your melodrama. It gets so light. When you stop being the victim and start being the creator. I mean, in you are all of these things, just like in me. You can pick which you want to juice up. We have to have the mic down just a bit, because I'm getting feedback. Well, you may have to listen more carefully. Or you may have to recognize that that may be a blessing. That may save you from getting lost in our intellect. See, victims are a karma. They are karma made manifest. The author, the creative impulse, the creative spark that is consciousness is always free. You are both free and trapped. In your freedom, you created your entrapment. And often you identify with that which is entrapped and feel entrapped. And yet in you is the Buddha nature, in you is Christ consciousness, the kingdom of heaven is within you. You and God are one because there is only one. Adonai Echad. A lot of people are feeling afraid these days. That's interesting. The other day I was up in Eugene, Oregon, speaking to a group of Eugenians. We were a panel. There was Joan Halifax and Lama Chogyal Rinpoche. Chaltril. And we were talking about death. And when it came my turn to speak, I thought, how do you talk about death? Because it's such a hype. I mean, it's obviously the conversation about life, and it's the conversation about change. And if you are, in your lifetime, recognizing any fear concerning change, that's your fear of death. I mean, the 80's have all of the forces in play of a speeding up towards what seems like imminent change. You can write a number of scenarios as to how dramatic that change will be. It may be the end of this species. It may be a realignment of power. It may be economic breakdown. It may be an increase in anarchy. It may be more repression and loss of freedoms. It may be war, limited nuclear holocaust. It may be an awakening of consciousness that transforms the whole thing into a flower. Are you ready? The great way is not difficult for one who has no preferences. Can you not care whether it is heaven or hell, and at the same time, well, let me not get us off the hook so fast. Can you not care whether it's heaven or hell? Ah, heaven. Ah, hell. It's a great story about the samurai. Samurai who comes to the monk and he says, "Monk, teach me about heaven and hell." The monk looks up at this huge samurai and he says, "Teach you about heaven and hell? You call yourself a samurai? You're dirty? You smell? Your sword looks rusty. Who would hire you as a samurai? You're a fool. You look stupid. I couldn't teach you about heaven and hell." The veins on the neck of the samurai stand out. His face gets all red. Finally, he just loses it completely, and he whips out his sword to kill this insolent monk, and the monk says, "That's hell." And the samurai sheathes his sword, realizing what teaching he's just been given. That the monk has just offered his life, really, for this teaching. And he bows in honor. And the monk says, "And that is heaven." So, flick of the mind, heaven, hell, heaven, hell. I was just in Benares this winter, and I was walking towards the bathing ghat, and there were a long line of lepers. And they all had begging bowls. And we had some coins between us, and so we divided up the coins. And I walked forward, and I ended up with about 18, 20 coins. There were about 150 lepers. What to do? I found myself in this peculiar situation as I walked down the line of trying to decide who should get the coins. Was missing a nose worse than having all the fingers rotted away on one hand? How bizarre. Until finally, since there was no rational way to deal with this situation, I had to transcend that plane of consciousness and go into the intuitive mind and just do what I did. And when the coins were all gone, and all the guilt was gone, and I quieted down enough, and I just looked at these beings. Here were all these fellow beings looking right back at me. And they didn't seem to be terribly busy being lepers. They were just running through leprosy. It turned out, I later found out, they have a union and they share all the money anyway. They created a creation, and I found in their eyes that they were less lost in their creation than most of us are. And when I have seen people who have their limbs rotted, who are living in one of the poorest and harshest countries of the world, and who are not lost in their melodrama for one reason or another, how can I be afraid on the physical plane? You and I may meet next time under a bridge eating rotted food out of rusty cans after the Holocaust. Aren't you Ramdas? Yes. Far out. Yeah. You want some of this? Sure. Whew, heavy, wasn't it? Yeah. Well, here we are. Yeah. A conscious being is somebody who is listening to the harmony, to the way of things, and is able to flow with change. It's interesting, the discrepancy that starts to coexist inside one. One part of one is just sitting with it all in its perfection, just grokking it. Just, wow, ah, ooh, dig that, ah. Even beyond that one, just, It's like looking at Michelangelo creating, David and the captive, and all the time, everywhere you look. It's just pure creativity. And all the forms are perfect. They are all essence what they are supposed to be. And there's nothing to be done. And in that realm, suffering is grace. It's part of what is dealt out within the creative act to bring the awakening, heavy though it is. Existing coincidentally with that is another part of being. It's the human being. And the human being has a heart. And the heart looks at what kind of shit is going down, and it is horrifying. And it feels so sad, and it hurts so bad. Just the pain of all the suffering there is in the world. And if you don't know about it, Amnesty International will tell you about it, SAVA will tell you about it, on and on and on will tell you about it. Oxfam will tell you about it. And to the extent that you are tuned and open to everything, meaning all the planes of your consciousness, and don't turn one off and grab at the other. Remember, the Great Way is not difficult for those who have no preferences. And it also says in this little tract, if you wish to move in the one way, do not dislike even the world of senses and ideas. See, you can't be an emptiness junkie. That's known as an up-level cop-out. Example, Sunflower, it's your turn to do the dishes. Sunflower says, we are all one. True enough, Sunflower, but it is still your turn to do the dishes. That's called grounding. And for a lot of us, grounding has become kind of fascinating. How to be the one and play at the game of the two. How to know it's all right and yet be so open and so pained and so in agony that you can only do what you can do to relieve suffering wherever you find it. Because what else is there to do? And you do it at whatever level it happens. First you try to decide, I'll do it at the highest level. But you find out that you have unique karma and you do it in whatever part you play. Last night I was staying at a motel, and around 2 in the morning I went in to get change for the Coke machine. It's Coca-Cola. And it was only a $1 bill I was changing. And the night attendant came out and he said, "Aren't you Ram Dass?" I said, "Yes." And he said, "Can I talk to you?" Okay. He said, "You know," he said, I've read books and I've really touched all of this, but I don't know how to manifest it. Here I am, a night clerk in this motel. That's it. I mean, is that enough? Aren't I blowing it? Shouldn't I be doing something more? I mean, can you hear the question? Well, the first answer is it doesn't make any difference. To which he says, well, it makes a difference to me. To which I say, well, that is your problem. Because until he will embrace original sin, until he's free to see that he is the creator of the situation he finds himself in, instead of just being himself that's found himself in it, as the creator, he will listen to the harmony of things, and we will find out, how does the Buddha manifest this time? And it might be as the night clerk in the motel. I mean, what form should the Buddha come in? Golden robes? Aerial chariots? A scent of flowers? How spiritually materialistic of you. How about a motel owner, night manager, who likes to frequent bars and meet young ladies? God couldn't come in that form. Come on now. Huh. Seeing, because you don't think so, you won't see it. Most people are so busy with their trips that God could be standing on the corner just looking, and everybody would walk by, seeing something different. Horny people would see irrelevant. Depending on the suit God we're wearing, or the dress, people would notice or not notice. First, you have to allow it all to be just the way it is before change starts to happen to the forms that manifest through you. As long as you don't buy your own trip, you're frozen in a certain way. Because you're pushing, which creates you keep creating the reality of the thing you're trying to get rid of. It's like people who spend 30 years in psychotherapy, just investing in the reality of their personalities. That's a big investment. I teach because I teach because I teach because I teach. It's no big deal. I am just a part of a process. If, as I listen more and more quietly, non-teaching is, then there will be non-teaching of this form. See, I realize that all you and I have to offer one another is what we are, not what we think we are. And when I come out here, I can say all kinds of things. You're not really picking up on that. You're picking up on what I am. And it's either feeding a place in you that also is, or it isn't. Maybe tonight you are a motel night clerk and tomorrow you're not. Maybe 10 years from now you're still a night clerk in the motel. You ready? Can you allow for all possibilities? Can you allow for the fact that just as you are manifesting is exactly the way you're supposed to be manifesting? And that the whole scene is going fine? Can you just get out of the drama just long enough? Just take one breath. I was with this woman who was dying, and she said to me, it was the night she died, actually, and she said to me, Ram Dass, she said, please help me die, I'm so bored. And I said, well, Jean, that's because you're busy dying all the time. I mean, it's just one scenario. You don't have to do it full time. You know, couldn't you die like 5 minutes an hour? You know, the rest of the time, let your body die. You just hang out, you know, listen to the birds and stuff. You don't have to be busy dying all the time. It's a very draggy role to play all the time, you know. Any role is, I mean, you know. Like driving a bus. What do you do? I drive a bus. You're at home in bed. I drive a bus. You know, like, see, it's like, I mean, you have thousands of roles. Thousands of them. So do I. That's why relationships are so far out, because it's like crowds of thousands, just between two people. Boy, and if you've got any hang-ups about change, you better watch it, because nothing changes like another being's personalities. The minute you think you know somebody, watch it. Sleepy time. Relationships are the most exciting, volatile, tantric technique going. They are just breathtaking, and almost everybody's drowning. Because everybody takes the role, only goes up to the level that relationship is real. Last Friday, I was part of a marriage ceremony. I was the third part of it. Malcolm and Shelley were getting married, and I was playing the other part. the fair witness. And as I was reflecting each time when I do that, which isn't very often, I just see in my mind the pyramid with the two people opening themselves to the place where they are one awareness, and then coming back into being the two separate entities, male, female, yab, yum, yin yang, and dancing the dance of the two rooted in the one. And that the marriage is the vehicle of the two coming into the one, not to deny the two-ness, but then to dance as two. But the difference of being caught in two and dancing in two is before Satori there is chopping wood and carrying water, and after Satori there is chopping wood and carrying water. Nothing special. And yet, but as long as you want something, you keep freezing the process. You keep demanding that your partner or your other people or the world stop for you so you can get hold of a place to stand. You said you'd be here at 6. Hold on tightly, let go lightly. It's 6:30, and you're not here, but here we are. But the dinner, tonight we are having spoiled dinner. So. I think I talked about it last, who knows, I don't remember. My father is a public speaker, or he was in years gone by. And after every lecture, he'd lecture in Cleveland. Then he'd go back to his hotel room and he'd write down all the things he said in Cleveland. And he'd have them in a file, so the next time he came to Cleveland, he'd run through the file and he wouldn't repeat himself. This couple came to see me and they said that they wished me to marry them, and I said, well, I only marry people that want God. And they, oh, we want God. I only marry people that understand that to get God, you've got to be truthful. Oh, we understand that. You're really ready to live in truth? Yes. She was particularly vociferous. So I turned to him and I said, if there's anything at all that you can't tell her, would you now tell her? And there was a silence. And then he said, well, after you and I decided we would stay together and just be with each other and nobody else, I was over at Sue's house and we had oral sex. Actually, I don't see why I should censor it just because I'm in this role. And she gave me a blowjob, was the actual wording of the statement. Sorry if it offends some of you, but I guess that's the way the cookie crumbles. She said, you what? You betrayed our... If I were from Central Casting looking for in a second, she was magnificent. Because she really felt her part. I mean, it was real method acting. And I laid down on the ground, and after about 10 minutes, I said, well, look, you came here to get me to marry you, and it seems that we've run into a slight snag here. So you have 3 choices, it seems to me. One is that you can get rid of this rat. I mean, he is completely a snake. He told you he wouldn't, and he did. And how could you ever trust him again? I'd back you if you want to get rid of him. He's absolutely a rat, and you're right, okay? The second alternative is you could say, well, I'll try to forgive you. That one you got to watch. We'll put out the garbage. After all, I'm trying to forget about Sue. This is 20 years later. We can all laugh because none of us do that. That's what Don Juan calls holding on to personal history. Keeping score, it's called. And the third alternative is you can say, so you're a rat and a snake in the grass and you're everything else, and here we are, and I still want to be with you, so let's go. I mean, that's who he is. He's just showing you who he is. If it's too heavy for you, find somebody who's something else. They now have a baby, and it's all hell. Who knows how it is? I actually have no idea how it is. I really certainly hope I didn't lay a curse. I hope it's heavenly for all of them. We have such a hard time letting go of our guile and regaining our innocence because our minds are so clever. We can imitate spiritual things so well. I sat with Werner Erhard once for 3 hours looking into his eyes. And he could do it so well. And yet he wasn't. What could I do about that? At least I couldn't, my heart didn't experience it. I kept saying, Werner, my heart doesn't experience it. You say it, very confusing. You must be a form of God I'm not ready to hear yet. Maybe I'm power tripping with you. I mean, you're making $7 million a year and I'm not, so it must be upsetting to me at some level. I'm a Jewish boy too, you know. I was in Hawaii recently, and Bhagwan Das, some of you may remember Bhagwan Das from somewhere, yeah. Bhagwan Das had just finished taking est. And Bhagwan Das and I took some acid together on the north side of Oahu, and these helicopters kept flying over carrying artillery on chains in front of our eyes every 15 or 20 seconds. Bhagwan Das picked the wrong spot, apparently. That's who Bhagwan Das is, if some of you don't know. He's got a lot of Shiva energy. We had a very extraordinary, beautiful visit together this time. He and Usha, his wife, and his kids. It's an incredibly loving scene. And I realized that for Bhagwan Das, est was absolutely perfect. He hasn't had any ground for years. He can hardly get to the toilet, you know. And suddenly he's got this language and this whole thing, and he's going to conquer the world, and he's now a computer real estate salesman or something like that. I mean, I think that's great, you know. I mean, there's no chance he's going to become like a humanoid, you know, like a little Werner. Hello. It's all shit. You know, it's hard to know who the straight players are in the game, really. I have a terrible time. I keep picking the wrong horses all the time, it seems. Which is okay from my point of view. I mean, anybody that's looking to me to decide what they should do, that's their problem. But, you know, I pick all these people because I need some teaching that makes me attracted to them. And then later, maybe I've had enough of that teaching, and I walk away, and there's all kinds of stuff. I think all you owe your teacher is to get liberated. You don't have to liberate your teacher. You don't have to become a connoisseur of clay feet. You know, a lot of people sit around, well, I don't know about him because he was seen at a bar with eating a... No, I don't really mean to knock Werner, because I don't really understand. I can say this, that as far as I can see, it would be great to take a course of est, which I never said publicly before. I think you'd be a fool to become an est person. I think one course gives, I've seen lots of people grow a great deal from one course. Then I see something else happen that just kind of loses interest for me. I mean, that's what, yeah, just in fairness. I'm doing this book about Emmanuel. Emmanuel's like Seth. And I first heard Emmanuel on station WBAI in New York, which is far out because you hear disembodied voices on radio, but usually you assume there's a body at the other end if you were to go to the studio. But who's to know, you know? I mean, every time you pick up the telephone, you assume there's somebody out there, which is really funny, you know? Well, actually, Emmanuel speaks through a gal named Pat Rodergeist. And I know Pat and I know Emmanuel, and either it's really either exquisite schizophrenia or it's, because Emmanuel is incredibly good and very different than Pat. Pat's a nice gal. But I said to Emmanuel, Emmanuel, I talk about death a lot. What should I tell people about death? Emmanuel said, tell them it's absolutely safe. See, now, I have no prejudice. Like, I'm not prejudiced about race or sex or color, and I'm not prejudiced about bodies, even whether a person has one or not. I mean, I'm willing to have a friend like Emmanuel. That's great. Wouldn't you like a friend that says that? He says, death's like taking off a tight shoe. I said to him, Emmanuel, what's my problem? He said, you've been enrolled in a school and you refuse to take the curriculum. So why don't you try being a human being? Accept your passions. Allow your humanness. Seemed like pretty good advice. So I took the winter off. And for October, November, December, January, 4 months, I was Richard Alpert. In England, in Paris, in Florence, in Rome, in Goa. I was like 3 weeks in Florence and about 5 weeks in Goa. Or we were. And there was hash, and there was grass, and there was, and there was fish, there was beer, there's French fried potatoes. There were no temples. I was at Benares. I went to the bathing ghats and the dyeings. I always like to check into Benares because it's so heavy duty. And I touch places in myself just through not being Ram Dass for winter. Places like I remembered from when I was 2 years old. And I experienced that what I was doing was starting to bring it all together, finding God in me, in the way it is, in my humanness, not in spite of my humanness. That I could be vulnerable, that I could be jealous. I mean, there were times when I was so jealous, I was climbing the walls. I thought, me, Ram Dass, climbing the walls from jealousy? How could this be? But there it was. But with it was this other part of me that was absolutely blown away and delighted. Find all this humanity lurking. It's interesting that as you could call it faith, but even that's almost got a too dualistic kind of tinge to it, because the lower definition of faith is faith in something, while really you live in faith, which means in harmony with or in oneness with. But it's sort of like faith. The more faith you have that you aren't who you think you are, the more you can allow yourself to be what you think you are. You can play with the forms because you're less frightened about getting lost in them. See, at first you come up for air and you say, wow, jeez. And all the time I thought, wow, man, where do I get more of this stuff? And then you get addicted to the memory of that moment as karma reasserts itself thickly. And you say, 7 years ago on a Tuesday night, I saw that it wasn't the way I thought it was. You're like the ancient mariner. That's who he is. He's 7 years ago on Tuesday night. And somewhere along the way, you stop holding on to the memories and allow the present moment, because right in the present moment is the whole business. In the present moment is the moment Tuesday night. As Hesse says, that's what life is at its most beautiful and exquisite game. Not game in the pejorative sense, but game in the delightful sense. Look at the part Alexander Haig is playing. You imagine that. How would you like to be him? And he's had a triple heart bypass. He's got nothing to lose. But look at the world you're living in. There's Bobby Sands, who just starved to death because of a belief. And he, in just another form, also happens to have, this time, a little red button. And he's part of a third world country, and he's got nothing to lose. And he says, if I'm going to starve to death, you're going too, baby. And you and I, as 6% of the population, using up 40+% of the natural resources of the world, playing king of the mountain. Pretty interesting, isn't it? Feels a little strange, doesn't it, to look at it that way? over Gandhi's tomb, it says, "Think of the poorest person you've ever known and ask whether your next act will be of any use to that person." Later, man, I'm just going to catch this flick. Can we? Is Gandhi's statement a big statement of guilt? Be guilty. See, like, I live in a place where I see that there is only one of us. And I realize that what keeps me from being in God is that I live certain acts as if I believed that there were more than one of us, and that some of us were them. And I'm doing that because I'm trying to hold on to something. It's like the Seva Foundation is a foundation designed to get rid of unnecessary blindness, because 80% of the world's blind are unnecessarily blind, it turns out. And there's this doctor, Venkataswamy, on the board, and he explains to me that in India, they do cataract operations, and they do one, in the clinics, the eye clinics, they can do one cataract operation every 4 minutes, and it costs $5. And that there are presently 7 million people in India waiting for this operation. And some may wait their whole lives. What am I going to do with my next $5? If it was my father that was there, if it was one of you that came up blind and said, "Could I have $5 and I can see?" Or is it them? It's those people that are blind in India. Now, the answer to this quandary of how you live simultaneously on two planes of consciousness, in which there is only one and there are also many, that's the interesting game for consciousness. And you hear different answers to that at different times. At least I do. Simone Weil, for example, said, "How can I eat more than the poorest person in the world eats?" So she starved to death. And a great writer-philosopher died because in her mind that was her particular route through. As with the starving people in the Irish prisons. But you can't imitate anybody. Buddha, Christ, Mother Teresa. You got to listen and hear your route through. What does it mean to be living in this county? What does it mean to be part of this family? What does it mean to have been born of this religion? What does it mean to be part of this nation? What does it mean to be part of this ecosphere? What does it mean to be this sex? What does it mean to be this age? What does it mean to be living in 1981? What does it mean to have this job or not have this job? What does it mean to be on welfare? What does it mean? What does it mean? What does it mean? What does it mean to be a soul that took a human incarnation? What does it mean to be an illusion? The answers to those you are never going to get with your rational linear mind. No way. You are going to have to up-level it. You're going to have to open to all of it without pushing and pulling and just allowing it all to be, and out of it will come some action. And you will begin to trust that action more. like people come to see me, and they come to see Ram Dass for one reason or another. And at first, there were so many people that I didn't quite know what to do. So I started to build categories of who I would see. And that's like lepers. How do you decide? But I saw that I was doing all that because I was afraid that if I just opened to my intuitive impulses, I would just let my psychology take over, and I would probably just have all those beings I lusted after, or who were rich, or powerful, because I didn't trust my own motives. And then I watched that as I played that one out, and I saw how empty that was. And it forced me in deeper, in which I just intuitively respond without judging why I respond that way. The response is based on tomorrow and yesterday and fatigue and the understanding there's nothing to do for anybody, and my love for people and my hearing the vibration they send and everything. And sometimes I say yes, and sometimes I say no. And I am learning, as I'm sure many of you are, how to say no without turning off your heart. It's hard, isn't it? Not to do something somebody wants you to do without pulling your heart back a little bit because you know that they're getting angry or you're giving them pain. But surrender doesn't mean surrendering to everybody's mind. It means surrendering into the harmony of the totality of the way it is. And out of that, sometimes you say no and sometimes you say yes. I have maybe 60 letters at this moment, a pack with an elastic around it, of organizations asking me to make a contribution. All the way from like Greenpeace, Oxfam, George McGovern for something or other. Different political issues, Amnesty International, CARE, monasteries, individuals doing works of art, friends that are up against it. And I take checkbook in hand, pen in hand, and what happens? What am I going to say? Everyone will get $10. I just go through, and at some moments, yes, and at some moments, no, because there's an infinite number of lepers. We are all suffering in different ways. I once spoke in New Hampshire. This was many years ago. It was about 68, I think. I spoke at a Jewish summer hotel, sort of like the Borscht Belt, except in New Hampshire. And it was after 5 weeks of rain, when many people had canceled their reservations and so on, but some people were hanging out. It was the first sunny day. And I was to speak right after lunch. And this place had 3 golf courses and 5 lakes. And the manager took me downstairs into a room that had pictures of Rudy Valley and Gloria Swanson and all the people who had been here to this hotel. His entertainment was signed to Frank with love, Quentin. And he said, look, he's got a cigar. I mean, it's all perfect. He says, look, it's the first day of sun. He says, we want to get all of them out on the lake and the golf course. So he says, after lunch, they got to sit for a little while, so you talk for 20 minutes. Okay. Come on up, we're having brisket for lunch. Great. So we have lunch, and afterwards we go outside, and they're sitting out on the patio. All of us are out on the patio, and here are these very portly gentlemen in bathing trunks with cigars, and very portly ladies, some of them with see-through bathing suits. and blue eyes, and coiffures. And they were all in deck chairs, reclining. And I was on for 20 minutes. See, the reason I was there is very peculiar. I mean, why would I do this even? You know, but like 20 years before that, 25 years, my father had spoken at that hotel raising money for the United Jewish Appeal for displaced children in Europe. Joint Distribution Committee, and it just felt like father, like son. I'll do it sort of, you know, I mean, I'll honor my thing, so I'll go do it. All I got was lunch out of it. They didn't even pay my gas. That's how tight those Jews are, I'll tell you. They're paying for it now. So I said to everybody, I said, well, you've got it made. Three golf courses, 5 lakes. The parking lot is filled with Cadillacs. You have finished a delicious pot roast dinner. The sun is out. You have furs, life insurance, places in Florida, condominiums. Your children go to good schools, or you've got them at good psychiatrists. You've made it. You've got it. This is it. Is it enough? That was the dirty card. That was the power play, which I would no longer do. See, that was the uncompassionate act. 2.5 hours later, nobody had moved. And when I got up to leave, I walked across towards I had a 1938 Buick, which I had shined up for the occasion. I walked across to my Buick, and I looked back, and here were these people all walking across the lawn to see me off. Portly, see-through. But for the moment, us. Recognizing in themselves something, touching something. Far out, isn't it?